The greatest empire the world had ever seen began with two abandoned babies and a wolf. This is the story of Rome, and almost none of it should have happened. The legend begins with twin boys, Romulus and Remus. By the old myth, they were the sons of a god. A frightened king ordered the babies drowned in the river Tiber. But their basket did not sink. It drifted to the shore. And there, the story says, a wolf found the crying twins. Instead of eating them, she fed them. A shepherd took the boys in and raised them as his own. The twins grew strong. They decided to build a city on the hills where they were found, but they could not agree on which hill. The argument turned violent. Romulus killed his own brother, Remus. He built his city anyway, and he named it after himself, Rome. By tradition, that was about 750 years before Christ. Now, this part is legend, not history. No one can prove the wolf or the twins were ever real. But the Romans believed it for 1,000 years. To them, Rome was born from a wolf and from a brother's blood. Remember that. The blood comes back. For its first centuries, Rome was ruled by kings. Then, the Romans threw their last king out. They were done with one man holding all the power. So around 500 years before Christ, they built something new. A republic. Instead of a king, Rome was now run by the Senate, a council of its most powerful men. And each year, the people elected two leaders called consuls. Two of them, never one. So that no single man could ever crown himself king again. That was the whole idea. Power split in half on purpose. And it worked. For centuries, Rome grew. Its armies were disciplined and relentless. One by one, Rome conquered its rivals across the Mediterranean. It swallowed Italy. It crossed the sea. Rome was no longer just a city. It was becoming a world. But all that conquest created a problem. It created generals, men with loyal armies and enormous ambition. And the most ambitious of them all was named Julius Caesar. Caesar was brilliant, charming, and hungry for glory. He spent years conquering Gaul, the land we now call France. He won staggering victories. The people adored him. The Senate feared him. So they ordered him to give up his army and come home alone. Caesar had a choice, obey or rebel. In the year 49 before Christ, he marched his army to a small river called the Rubicon. To cross it with soldiers meant war against his own government. He stopped at the water's edge, and then he crossed. According to legend, he said, "The die is cast. There was no turning back now." Caesar won his war. He was made dictator for life. The republic, the system built to stop one man from ruling, now had exactly that. One man ruling everything. Not everyone could accept it. On the 15th of March, 44 before Christ, a crowd of senators surrounded Caesar. Led by men he trusted, they stabbed him to death where the Senate met. They thought they were saving the republic. Instead, they had killed it. Caesar's death did not bring the old Rome back. It started another war. And out of that war rose Caesar's young heir, Octavian. Octavian was patient, cold, and clever. He hunted down his last rival, Mark Antony, and Antony's ally, the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. He crushed them at the Great Sea Battle in the year 31 before Christ. Now, no one was left to stand against him. In 27 before Christ, the Senate gave him a new name, Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The republic was gone. The age of emperors had begun. What came next was extraordinary. For about 200 years, the Roman world was mostly at peace. Historians call it the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And Rome used that peace to build. They built roads. Stone roads, straight and strong, reaching across the entire empire. By some estimates, the network ran for hundreds of thousands of miles. They were built so well that parts of them still survive today. That is where the old saying comes from. All roads lead to Rome. They built aqueducts, long stone bridges that carried fresh water across whole valleys and into the cities using nothing but gravity. They mixed a kind of concrete so tough that Roman domes and harbors are still standing 2,000 years later. They wrote down laws, ideas about courts and contracts and rights that still shape how you live today. And the city of Rome itself became a wonder. Close to 1 million people, grand temples, busy markets, and the greatest stage of all, the Colosseum. A vast arena of stone that could swallow tens of thousands of roaring spectators. Here is the part many people forget. The shows were free. Emperors handed the people free bread and wild entertainment to keep them happy and obedient. A Roman writer mocked it with a famous phrase: bread and circuses. Keep the crowd fed and amused, and they will not ask dangerous questions. Inside the arena, gladiators fought for their lives while the crowd screamed for blood. There were hunts with wild animals and battles staged for show. It was thrilling. It was also savage. This was Rome at its height, glorious and merciless at the very same time. And then, a reminder that not even Rome could control everything. In the year 79, a mountain called Vesuvius exploded. It buried the entire town of Pompeii under ash in a single afternoon. Thousands of people died. But that same ash sealed the town like a time capsule. Even now, you can walk Pompeii streets, see its painted walls, and find the shapes of the people, frozen exactly as they were that morning. The empire kept on growing. Around the year 117, under the Emperor Trajan, Rome reached its greatest size ever. It stretched from the cold green hills of Britain to the deserts of the Middle East. Tens of millions of people, all living under one ego. And here's something that almost never gets mentioned. Around the year 212, an emperor declared that nearly every free person in the empire was now a Roman citizen. A farmer in Egypt, a trader in Spain, a soldier in Britain. Millions of people who had never seen Rome could suddenly call themselves Roman. It was one of the largest single grants of belonging in all of history. Rome had become the closest thing the world had ever seen to a single global power. It looked unstoppable. It was not. The trouble started at the very top. The empire had no clear rule for choosing the next emperor. And when the throne is the greatest prize on earth, men will kill for it. It became absurd. In the year 193, the emperor's own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guard, murdered him. Then they did something almost unbelievable. According to the old accounts, they put the empire up for sale. Whoever paid them the most could be the next emperor. A wealthy man bought the throne like a piece of furniture. He lasted about 2 months before he, too, was killed. Think about that. The most powerful position in the world sold to the highest bidder. That is how rotten things had become. And it got worse. In the middle of the 200s, the empire very nearly tore itself apart. Emperors rose and fell in a blur, many of them lasting only months. Enemies smashed across the borders from every direction. A terrible plague swept through the cities. The money itself lost its value. For about 50 years, Rome teetered on the edge of total collapse. It survived, but only barely. A tough soldier named Diocletian dragged the empire back from the brink. But he made one fateful decision. The empire, he declared, was simply too vast for a single man to rule, so he split it in two, an eastern half and a western half. It was meant to make Rome stronger. In the end, it marked the beginning of the end. The next great emperor changed Rome forever in a way no army ever could. His name was Constantine, and he did two things that still echo today. First, he embraced Christianity. For centuries, Rome had hunted and killed Christians. Constantine stopped it. He made the faith legal across the whole empire. A religion that began as a persecuted sect would go on to conquer Rome from the inside. Second, he built a brand new capital. Far to the east, where Europe meets Asia, he raised a magnificent city and named it after himself, Constantinople. Slowly, the heart of the empire drifted east toward the wealth and the safety. And the old city of Rome, in the west, was left behind and exposed. The western half was now weak, divided, and ringed by hungry enemies. And in the year 410, the unthinkable happened. A foreign army broke into the city of Rome itself and sacked it. For the first time in nearly 800 years, Rome had fallen to an enemy. The shock ran through the entire world. If Rome could fall, then anything could. It was not the last time. Decades later, another people plundered the city all over again. The Western Empire was bleeding out. Its armies were hollow. Its borders were gone. Piece by piece, the West slipped away. And then came the final strange twist. In the year 476, a Germanic commander removed the last Western emperor and simply took his place. There would be no more emperors in the West. And here is the detail that sounds invented, but is completely true. That last emperor of the Western Roman Empire was just a boy, and his name was Romulus. The empire that was born from a Romulus, by legend, died with a Romulus, in fact. It began with one boy and a wolf. It ended with another boy and a crown taken away. But here is what most people get wrong about the fall of Rome. Rome did not actually die. Remember that eastern half, the one Constantine had built up. It did not fall in 476. It lived on for almost another 1,000 years. We call it the Byzantine Empire. But they never did. To the very end, they called themselves Romans. The last piece of Rome did not vanish until their great city finally fell in the year 1453. And even then, Rome did not truly disappear. It is still all around you. When you speak Spanish, French, Italian, or Portuguese, you are speaking the children of Latin, the language of Rome. Our laws, our courts, the months on your calendar, even the shape of the great buildings in our capitals, all of it still carries Rome's fingerprints. In places, we are quite literally still walking on Roman roads. An empire that began with a myth about a wolf grew up to rule the world, collapsed under its own weight, and then refused to truly die. And here is what stays with me about Rome. It spent 500 years terrified of letting one man hold too much power. Then it handed the whole world to an emperor anyway. The very thing that built it became the thing that killed it. And every empire since has made the same quiet bet that this time will be different. So before you go, tell me which empire should be next. Drop it in the comments. Because every empire believes that it will last forever. And the story of how they are all proven wrong might just be the most human story there is.